Okay, not really sure why people wanted me to talk about this movie, but I guess I can do a review. The live action 2023 Disney movie. That is The Little Mermaid. A few things off the jump. Number 1, I am not a fan of the Disney live action films. I'm not. Have I watched most of them? Yes, a few I actually went to the theater to go see. I think Beauty and the Beast and the Aladdin. I went to theaters to see those, and I saw a few others. Either when I bought the home release, whether it be Blu-ray, DVD, or on Disney Plus. Not a fan of them. I prefer the animated versions for multiple reasons. Number 2, I was never a big fan of the original Little Mermaid film, the animated one from '89. Being a boy and whatnot, it's just like I never really gravitated towards that film. I mean, Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, Aladdin, even underrated Disney movies like Atlantis, The Lost Empire, or Oliver and Company. I'll watch those any day. But you know, Little Mermaid, Sleeping Beauty, Bambi, Alice in Wonderland. Nah, I don't really like those. But, I just wanted to make that clear. Like, it's not like I'm going to say, oh, I love the original film and this remake is awful. But for context, I did watch the animated one about 2 hours before I saw the live action one for context. Because I didn't really grow up watching the animated one all the time. I wanted to watch that one before watching the original. That way I can, mentally compare the two. Another thing, I'm a 31-year-old black man. I am clearly not the target audience for this movie. I mean, granted, people in my age group are in a way targets for the movie itself, for nostalgia reasons and whatnot. Oh, they saw the cartoon one as a kid, so they'll definitely want to see a live action one, in 2023 as adults when most of these people have their own kids. And number 4, last thing I want to point out, I get the impact of the film. There's been a lot said about the movie before it even came out. I forgot what year it was when it was announced that Halle Bailey was going to be Ariel. If I remember correctly, I think it was 2020 or 2021. I think it was 2020 though. I remember doing a video about the subject because at the time I wasn't a big fan of it for a few reasons. Number 1 being that, it became a trend for movies and whatnot, TV shows to like gender swap or race swap prominent, well-known characters. And this went down during the Black Lives Matter, George Floyd stuff. Yeah, so it was 2020 then, yeah. Because it was just, around the time like Aunt Jemima being switched off for, Pearl Milling Company or whatever. It just felt, this is just me. It just felt like there was a lot of pandering going on at the time by these companies and whatnot to show, oh, we care about black people. White voice actors who have been voicing black characters for years have, stepped down from their roles to allow, black voice actors to, accept those roles instead. Or, oh, we're going to take the racist stereotype of Aunt Jemima off of the syrup and pancake bottles and boxes. Oh, we're going to, do this, that, and the third. It just felt like everybody was trying to show that they were down for the cause, but at the time, black people, and even now, it's like we just want to be treated fairly. We just don't want each time a cop that pulls us over, we assume it to be our final moments here on Earth. So when the news first came out, I was not a fan. I will let you know that right now. I did a video and everything about it. I have reasons more about that, but I'll talk about that at the end of the video. Y'all want me to get to the review. In my opinion, this was not the worst live action film. It's kind of mid-tier. I would, if I were to score it, I would give it maybe like a 4 out of 10. It's not like, see, the thing is, it's like, because I wasn't a huge fan of the original, I didn't think, not hashtag, not my Ariel. Ariel isn't black. No, I just didn't care. Because, I mean, I'm not crazy about the original film, but I felt like this movie had a lot working against it. Black Ariel is not the thing. I got many reasons why. Okay. Now, I will mention the Black Ariel being a reason why some people were against it, but in terms of me putting that aside, I think this movie had no business being over 2 hours long. The original clocked in a little over 80 something minutes. So what? That's not even under, it's under 2 hours, under 2 hours. A lot of stuff happened in that film. This film felt dragged out. They added new characters, like Prince Eric had a mom in the movie, the Queen. It's just a bunch of dialogue that I felt was not needed. So I felt like that was one thing that struck, the movie out for me. I did not care for the runtime. It feels like ever since Avengers Endgame, everybody is like, okay, yeah, we need movies to be 2.5, 3 hours long. No, you do not. What happened to good condensed storytelling in movies? I mean, there are some long movies that you don't feel the runtime. Like, for example, as a kid, during Passover, whenever ABC would air the Ten Commandments, it was damn near impossible to sit through the entire thing because it felt so long. As an adult, I own the movie on several DVDs and Blu-ray copies over the years. I can sit and watch both parts of the film without a problem. It's like, okay, it's a great film. I can watch the entire thing. But then again, as an adult, you also realize, oh yeah, that's because ABC has commercials in it. Plus, some things are cut from it. But watching the movie as an adult versus a kid, the length feels different. This movie, I felt those 2 hours. I did. It just felt like, okay, there's just way too much going on that doesn't need to be in here. Number 2, the score. Halle's rendition of Part of Your World is, Lord have mercy, it is far and away the superior version of the song. I like the original, but like those memes say, it's unseasoned. Halle put those riffs in there, the way she enunciated some of her words, just the powerful music, but that alone, like when they released the first initial teaser of the movie at like a Disney Expo or something, and it got leaked online, and I heard part of her vocals from the song, I was in tears. A week or so ago, or I think it was 3 weeks or so ago, Halle, shared like, hey, the entire, my version of Heart of Your World is on streaming, platforms. And I listened to it. I was in tears. When I was looking at this movie and it got to that part, I was in tears. Oh man, powerful stuff. A lot of the other songs I felt did not live up to the original movie itself. I mean, Under the Sea was pretty good, but I think I prefer the animated version of Under the Sea. But I did like the visuals that the movie did with the song itself. I will say that. Because, in the movie, the animated one, it's like the fish and everybody under the sea are playing instruments. But in this film, you get to see the animals like moving around and whatnot. So I thought that was pretty cool. They felt more animal-like since they weren't, all playing instruments and whatnot, like a band or whatever. Lord have mercy. Awkwafina. I don't really have hate for this comedian. What is she? A comedian, actor, and whatnot? I don't really despise her, but I do feel like that Mean Girls quote is like, stop trying to make Awkwafina happen. It's not going to happen. She, what's the name? Scuttle? Scuttle, is that the name of the seagull who is a different kind of bird in this movie and also female? I have no issue with Scuttle being a female in this movie as opposed to a male in the, original. I just did not like the voice at all, Awkwafina's voice. And then the fact that Lin-Manuel Miranda gave her an entire rap song. Look, I love Hamilton. I still do. But this song, that song she sang or rapped, did not need to be in this movie. No. If I was just ranking the score from Halle's, songs, then my goodness, yes, she murdered it. But there are a few songs that either did not need to be a part of this movie or just did not live up to the original. That leads to my next point. When I think about the acting itself, I feel like this is a thing that brings down a lot of the live action films. Most of the dialogue is beat for beat like the animated one. So you kind of know already what the words are. Like, I remember watching the Beauty and Beast film when in Aladdin, when I went to theaters, I was kind of mouthing the words as the actors were saying them because I knew what they were going to say. And sometimes they would, add a few things in there, but for the most part, not all the time in these movies, but a lot of the time, I don't think the actors are able to express the same level of emotion as the animated movies themselves. So it just feels like people reading off lines as opposed to them genuinely saying them, if that makes any sense. It just felt like a dreary version of The Little Mermaid. Kind of like, what was that movie? Peter and Wendy, the live action Peter Pan remake on Disney Plus, which is, in my opinion, god awful. I'm not even a huge fan of the original, same vein as Little Mermaid, but the animated one is just a superior version. So the acting I felt was kind of meh. Melissa McCartney, I thought, did a decent job as Ursula. I thought she looked good in the role. She was probably one of my favorite actors in this film, and I'm shocked by that. I really am. But it just felt like she was the closest in terms of capturing the essence of the original Ursula, but I feel like she didn't quite measure up. But she was a standout in this movie to me. Let's talk about... Oh yeah, I do feel Halle's acting as Ariel, once she got her legs and, was mute, I did see some chemistry between her and Eric, but I'm not really a lovey-dovey kind of person. I'm a romantic at heart, but, when romance trumps a good story, that's when I'm like, okay. But yeah, I felt like, maybe she could have been more wide-eyed in terms of being, wow, okay, this is this is the land and whatnot. But I felt like the whole amnesia crap made no sense. The plot itself, they made some changes that made absolutely no sense. What was the whole thing like? Anytime she was about to go in for a kiss or right before a kiss was about to happen, she would get amnesia. I felt like they made things a bit convoluted. Ursula's plan in the original was, like, why couldn't Ariel just write her name or something? But I don't know. The movie kind of jacked that up. Going back to like the scores or the songs themselves, there was a big talk about, oh yeah, well this movie isn't about, a woman leaving the water because of a man. She's doing it for herself. And we're changing some of the lyrics like to kiss the girl and whatnot to represent consent. This is a modern retelling. Look, I'm not going to sit up here and preach about the ridiculousness of wokeness, girl empowerment, girl boss moments, men are trash, yada yada yada. A lot of that is true in terms of how Hollywood writes these movies. But I watched the original before watching this. Where are these people getting the idea that the original didn't practice consent, or in a way Ariel was the victim? She was the one pushing up on Prince Eric to get him to kiss her in order to, break that spell Ursula had and get her voice back. Ariel was the one who signed the contract. Prince Eric wasn't trying to, push up on her. It was the other way around. Not to mention, Ariel did not leave the sea because of Eric. She originally was interested in the upper world or dry land before she even knew he existed. She fell in love with him. That was kind of like, okay, yeah, now I gotta go up there. But she was always driven to go up above. So to make it sound like the original was this woman pining after a man the entire time, and this modern retelling is a woman who wanted adventure, I felt like was a poor way. It felt like they were shitting on the original to make this one seem more proper. That's what I didn't like. I felt like that was a bigger issue than, oh, we have a black girl playing Ariel as opposed to a white one. Because I feel like it's like, what was it, a few years ago during the Me Too and whatnot, it was all, oh, baby, it's cold outside. That's a non-consensual song. It's about a man pressing up on a woman and whatnot. I just feel like nowadays everybody is so quote unquote sensitive, and it's ridiculous. There was no need to change the lyrics of the song. And then the big thing that a lot of people talk, Ariel was the one that took out Ursula instead of Eric. Now, I did some research, and based on what I found, I believe in some Broadway adaptations of The Little Mermaid, Ariel is the one who takes out Ursula. So I am not going to sit here and trash on this movie for making that change, because it was not the first thing to do it. However, one of the themes of the original film was Trident not trusting humans on the surface, and Eric putting his life on the line to take out Ursula to save Ariel, and by extension rescuing her and everybody else who was a victim of Ursula's magical contracts, including Trident himself. That showed him that not all land dwellers were bad, leading into him being more, okay, yeah, I think I can accept my daughter going up on dry land now. But with Ariel, when she's the one doing it, which, look, it's a movie about mermaids and magical contracts and giant octopi and whatnot. So I can't be too literal with this. But I have no idea how Ariel was supposed to steer the ship, because apparently it takes a lot of skill to steer a ship. And then on top of that, she didn't have any legs. So did she just balance on her tail to do it? Like her leg muscle or tail muscle strong enough for her to do it? You know what? Whatever. She's the one that takes her out. And the movie, speaking of race, Trident must have messed around with mer people across the 7 seas, because all of his daughters are a different nationality. Okay. He must be the Zeus of the sea. You know, if anything about mythology, you know, Zeus would, screw anything that moved. But, yeah, this didn't do it for me. No, I won't watch this anymore. The soundtrack, yeah, I'll listen to a few of them songs, but the movie itself, no, I'm good. I'm good on that. But last thing I wanted to talk about, and Flounder, oh my gosh, the CGI, I was not a fan of that either. I prefer the anime. It's just like with The Lion King. I mean, I didn't watch that movie. I think maybe earlier I said I watched the live action. I was mistaken. I did not. I watched the trailer, and just looking at those animals, I'm like, no, I can't. They don't emote. They don't have a lot of good expressions like the animated one. When it comes to these Disney live action films, it's like, I want McDonald's. We got McDonald's at home. I want to watch the live action Lion King. We have the Lion King at home. Yeah, the original animated one on VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, Disney Plus, take your pick. It's superior to the one that you want to get from a drive-through, or in this case a movie theater. I think that, yeah, visually it had its moments, but for the most part it felt kind of dreary and whatnot. I got sick of looking at the ocean during the first scenes when it was just all dark and whatnot, but it just didn't. But that's a lot of movies nowadays that look kind of plain, or they don't really have a lot of excitement. Hence why the musical number Under the Sea was one of my favorite visual aspects of the film. But like I said before, Flounder, ugh. Sebastian had the Mr. Krabs eyes. No. But this leads to my last point here. A couple things about like the box office currently. The box office, okay, the budget itself was $250 million. Typically in Hollywood talk, when it comes to the box office, you want to at least double the budget to get, a return, because this movie did a lot of promotion. Like, I think it was $10+ million to get that preview during the Oscars recently. And then, all the different commercials and advertising things that went down. There was a lot of money that went into this. I'm not going to sit up here and say the movie's going to flop. I'm not. But it's just one of those things where, I'm sick of every time Disney or Marvel or, some sort of reboot releases a film, and then everybody and their mother's like, it's going to flop, it's going to flop. I'm going to wait. But a friend of mine sent me this tweet, and it was a very, very well crafted tweet, and I'm going to read it to you so you can get the context of it. 'Cause I thought it was well put together. Just one moment while I pull it up here. Also, while I'm pulling it up, please take a moment to hit the thumbs up button to show you like the video, and hit subscribe. Okay, the tweet says, The Little Mermaid opened with $96 million Friday through Sunday domestic and $164 million worldwide. It should be around $200 million by Monday. Now, I just pulled it up. It is 9 a.m. May 30th. Currently, I see it at $185 million. But of course, we got to wait a day or two for these numbers to update. Okay. The front-loaded domestic figure and the lousy overseas figure looks a lot more like the Solo, a Star Wars movie, than Aladdin. And side note here, the actor that played Aladdin from the live action film, he got flack and deleted his Twitter. Long story short, his tweet was about, it came from a bitter place, but people thought, him hating on The Little Mermaid was him being anti-black. But basically, he went into detail about how, it's funny how I don't think The Little Mermaid is going to do $1 billion at the box office, but it's going to get a sequel, while Aladdin did get $1 billion and it's not getting a sequel. I'll get more into that in a minute, but let me finish reading this tweet. Okay. I'm presuming it'll be at least a little leggier than the usual over under the, Memorial Day weekend numbers. But now it has to be. During the Memorial Day weekend in the past, you had like X-Men movies, Fast and Furious 6, Pirates of the Caribbean 5, and so on. Now, at this point, overseas, The Little Mermaid has earned around half of what Aladdin has opened with. Now, if it is ignored overseas, it'll be another case of an IP that meant much more in the United States than elsewhere. Case in point, 2016's Ghostbuster reboot. And the Star Wars Solo movie that overseas audiences rejected. And there's no Will Smith level added value element for The Little Mermaid. And that's the part I'm like, yeah, that actually makes sense, because when you look at the cast listing, there really isn't an international powerhouse in the cast listing at all, like a Will Smith or Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, or to some extent even a Kevin Hart. Because, yeah, I know some people like Kevin Hart. Yeah, he's done a lot of movies internationally that have done well. Yes, he has. Now, I'm concerned to the extent that it matters as to whether, people will use the soft overseas launch to paint an overseas moviegoers or racist narrative, even as they flock to movies like Fast X, Across the Spider-Verse, and Rise of the Beast over the next month. The strong domestic launch, front-loading aside, shows that the racist, sexist, online industrial complex should again be ignored. They don't matter. They don't move the needle. They don't speak for a majority. We've known this since The Force Awakens in 2015. Basically, this is saying that just because the movie doesn't do well, it's not an excuse to go, oh, racist didn't see it, or, oh, you're just sexist because it's a female-led movie. That's the problem with a lot of movies that are flops in today's culture. Just because something flops, everybody points the finger at this group of people for hating women, this group of people for hating, this, LGBT community, this group of people for hating this skin color. Sometimes a movie flops because it's not a good movie. Simple as that. That's what I think when it comes down to it. And when it comes to the Aladdin actor, I saw that movie. He was not a good actor in that movie. He really wasn't. It felt like they took bad. It felt like some of these Tyler Perry shows where it's like, did they choose a bad take as the final one, because it doesn't feel like he's, emoting well at all. And his singing is nowhere near as good as Naomi Scott, the actress that played Jasmine. Because I challenge you on YouTube or Spotify, but let's go YouTube. Look up the live action Aladdin scene for a part of your world, and Jasmine sings circles around this guy. And I'm not hating on him either, because but I'm just pointing out, as a viewer of that film, he was not a standout actor. And I remember not long after the film came out, he posted online about hating on the movie because he thought Aladdin was going to open up so many doors for his career, but he was getting no calls at all. But basically, it's a situation where, you come across as just a bitter actor who didn't get the, break that you want. I think he appeared in maybe one or two Hallmark movies or something, but yeah, Aladdin didn't do anything for him. It really didn't. Then when it came to his tweet about the Little Mermaid, while there is some truth to what he's saying about how it's likely that the Little Mermaid might get a sequel, but it won't do the numbers that Aladdin did, you got to look at different factors here. Number one, Aladdin had to work against COVID. COVID came out before there was any real, movement towards a sequel. And then, of course, with the Will Smith slap, I don't think Disney's going to work for him. So he got, told off of Twitter because of his tweet. Now, I think the final point I want to make here, because going back to what that tweet said about, domestically the movie's going to do well, but overseas it probably won't. Yeah, because there really isn't that international star power to warrant people overseas, ironically enough, to go watch this movie about being under the sea. Just like Black Panther, this does have an impact on the Black community, specifically those who are female with a darker skin tone. And, there are plenty of videos of little girls who show emotion during or after the film for what it means to them. And that's beautiful. But I think going back to my 2020 video about why I didn't like the idea of Black Ariel, as a Black person in general, I think it sucks when it just seems like we're being handed hand-me-downs. What I mean by that is when you have a well-established character of any genre, whether it be comic books, a movie character, a famous character in a television series, what have you. I'll just use an example of Superman because, there's talks of the Black Superman movie coming out. And yes, I know there's a Black Superman in the comic books. And, in comic books, DC, Marvel, there's a whole multiverse out there. So how dare you say there's no Black Superman out there? I know it's possible. Multiverse is infinite. But I'm just going to use Superman for an example here. When you take a well-established fictional, yes, I know they're fictional. But when you take a character who is decades years old, who is known to be a certain way, white, for example, and then you decide to race swap that character, diversity, you put out a project and it gets crapped on. Then the movie or whatever comes out and it doesn't do so well. I think that does more harm to the Black community than it helps it. What do I mean by that? I don't know the inner workings of Hollywood. I'm not an actor. All I do on my channel is talk about television shows, and Tyler Perry is outside of the realm of Hollywood. He said that many times before. He marches to the beat of his own drum. Hollywood be damned. But when you look at all these interviews, reading magazine articles, blogs and whatnot over the years growing up, from Black actors, people who have been in the game for decades, who sometimes they don't get their big break until their 50s, 60s or whatever. And they talk about what it was like, working in Hollywood when Black actors, it was hard to even get a role. When Black Panther blew up, a lot of people said this is going to change the narrative. Yep, see, because Hollywood is always like, when it comes to films, Black stars and movies focused on Black people in a positive light don't do well. But Black Panther broke the mold. I think for every Little Mermaid or film out there which race swaps a character to be Black and then it flops, that's just another reason for people to go, see, this is why we don't, that Black people aren't marketable. No, see, this is another example of why when you put out a movie focused on a Black lead, it's not going to do well. So we need less of those and more of the white movies. I would rather a character who is already established to be non-white, let's just say in this case, a Black character, whether it be in comic books, fairy tales, or what have you. I would rather those stories get the movies, get the live action, remakes and whatnot. For example, Static, aka Static Shock, Milestone Comics, beloved animated series. make a movie for him. I know there's been talks of a Static movie, but then it got dropped, and there's no telling if James Gunn's going to pick it up or whatever. But I think that there needs to be more focus on black stories in the media. Because when you take white characters and race swap them, that's one strike right there. Because how dare you take a character I love and then race swap it? Then on top of that, you put out the film and it's already going to be compared to a famous rendition of the same movie. Case in point, like me, I watched the 89 version and I compared it to the 2023 version. I think the animated one is better for a number of reasons. And then on top of that, you got to look and see what the critics say, but most importantly, what the box office says. And I think when you give black actors these hand-me-down roles in these projects and they flop, it does more harm than good, as I said before. Now, yes, in Broadway and whatnot, and, you know, Cinderella, what was it, 97 when Brandy played Cinderella, I had a good a conversation with somebody who was level-headed, and I was able to talk, and we both, were able to communicate our thoughts without one getting all biased or getting offended. I think today's world is far more focused on the checkbox of diversity and inclusion as opposed to telling good stories. I feel like they try to pander to too many groups of people as opposed to focusing on a solid script. Haters be damned, because I think this morning I saw trending, there's not enough LGBT representation in The Little Mermaid. And it's like, wow, they definitely crossed the diversity with the number of different nationalities in the film. You got a black Ariel, but it's just like with Black Panther, like you got the Dora Milaje. How come there aren't any, LGBTQ, in their organization? It's just like, you can't win. It feels like every time they try to check off boxes, there's always one that gets, missed. And it's ridiculous. Make a solid script. There are so many fairy tales and whatnot that I feel like could be created in order to focus on different nationalities without reaching back, pulling a already established IP, race or gender swapping for the sake of making buzz in the news. Because when it's all said and done, that's all it is. Just some media noise. And everybody's just going to go back to the original animated film. Now, like I said before, from the impact, yes, people are seeing themselves on screen, and that's a great thing. But, growing up, Mr. Rogers, so many shows like that. Hell, even ones that were, where you have puppets like Between the Lines or, Sesame Street and whatnot. It wasn't always about seeing yourself that made a show good or taught you how to be a good person. Sometimes you just let go and enjoy a show, as opposed to, I need to feel a certain way when I watch something. But then again, that's just me. I know some people are like, you're a hater. You don't want, to see strong black women. That's not the point of what I'm saying whatsoever. I want to see strong black female representation, but not a, race swap version of it. I want to see black stories. There are black fairy tales out there. There are black heroes, black, heroines out there that deserve to have their stories told, as opposed to taking the white version, making it black, and then putting out to the masses to get shat on, so, but that's just my thoughts on it. Like I said before, nowadays it's all about the, diversity stuff, but when the Brandy Cinderella came out, that was just about having a good time and being a good ass rendition of the movie, or, the story of Cinderella. Like, obviously social media didn't exist back then, so I don't know what the masses said about it, but it's still to this day a very beloved film. Like, hell, compare The Wiz to The Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz every day. I thought The Wiz was way too long. Soundtrack was fire though, but I thought it was way too long. But those are my thoughts on The Little Mermaid. Did you enjoy it though? Don't let my opinion of it, make you not enjoy it. But then it's just like with the shows I review. If you enjoy it, hey, you enjoy it. If you don't, you don't. That's all I got. Talk to you in the next one.